This is the GPL podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
You're younger than my dad.
Oh,
My dad's 50. My dad's 56.
You're younger than my dad. Yeah, that makes me feel so much better.
But the Big Ten's a bad conference. That's a joke. If this gets clipped, that's a joke.
Oh, no.
We're definitely clipping that one now.
You know, it was good to see that the Big Ten Network recognized how to cover hockey last week.
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 287 and the season finale of our 14th season, Vigs. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. This has been a long season. You know, all the expectations coming into it, and just hockey's a long season.
It is a long season. It's just, well, it's the longest in like college sports, isn't it?
It sure is. That Bob tells me that every year. He's like, I don't know if we want to get going so early when they're allowed to start practicing, because by the end of the year, the guys are going to get sick of me. So we got to hold off just a little bit.
And by the way, your audio sounds good to me on my end. So you sound good to everyone else.
Okay.
So hopefully it's not too bad for you on your end. So
Seems fine.
but that's live broadcast.
We'll do it live.
We kind of have a special guest that we know is watching us tonight, don't we?
He's got it figured out.
He's got it figured out. It sounds like Dan Woog. He's been going back and forth with us. Said he loves the podcast. I sent him live league. Hi, Dan Woog. Hopefully things are well for you. Hopefully we can get together next week like we planned for maybe a little Zavigs.
Maybe.
All right, let's get to the bad news. We haven't been here for a couple weeks because Minnesota lost in their first game against UMass in the regional in Fargo. Oh, it's the ref's fault. It's the coaching's fault. It's the players' fault. It's hockey, Vigs.
It is hockey. And, you know, for a team that had such an up and down season for Minnesota, they played a really solid 2 periods of hockey in the most important game of the year. Like, I thought they were the better team. Greg Carvel agreed with me, the UMass head coach. Minnesota was aggressive on pucks. They looked more engaged. They were aggressive. They were playing smart. They were doing all the things you have to do for winning hockey. And then you get to the third period, and a couple breaks don't go your way, and they just never really recovered.
Mm-mm. They didn't recover at all. And the funny thing is, Jimmy Snuggerud sure showed up. He hadn't gotten an NCAA point in the 6. He had 1 NCAA point in 6 NCAA games, and that was at that same arena. 2 years previous, 2 years previous against Canisius. Power play goal, kind of a meaningless goal in a 9 whatever game. But I really loved his game. He showed up. He got a goal in the middle of the game. He got the goal to tie the game late after they had kind of were on that down roller coaster part, like you just said. So I was actually really happy with his play. Yeah. Guy deflected the puck right in front of him to go for the game winner, but boy, I'm glad he was there for the game. He showed up like I had been kind of talking about him wanting to do.
And I thought his body language throughout the entire game was very positive.
Yeah.
He stuck with it. He stuck to the game plan. He stuck to the battle, kept competing. And that goal at the end of the game to tie it up off the faceoff, the first faceoff, he got the shot, took it really quick. The second time, he held on to it just a little bit longer and let the play set up and took advantage of it. And when I talked to him after the game, he's just like, it was a great draw by my centerman. was great traffic by my teammate, and I just had the chance in front of me and I executed. And to me, that is such the college hockey mindset that you have to be successful. You have to let those plays show up and then you execute. Because if you start chasing plays, you get yourself into real trouble in college hockey.
We have to talk about it. Quite a few controversial calls, or I should say non-calls. The second goal, which kind of got UMass going, something missed behind the nets. Maybe the game-winning goal on a non-trip. I don't like it when teams put blame on refs for what happens in a game. I think it's more of a compilation of a lot of things, but it is a factor, not maybe the factor.
It's definitely a factor. Like, you can't deny Luke Middlestat getting high sticked in the corner pretty violently,
Yes.
going uncalled, isn't a problem. But at the same point, there's 4 other Gophers on the ice and a goalie who can stop that play from happening. And what you see sometimes in situations with Minnesota, I think, is they get that bad call or the non-call, and they don't recover and kind of circle the wagons to overcome it. And that's what happened on that goal. The goalie controversy with
that
Soulier's
too, yes.
leg pad strap getting cut, and then the refs just not managing the game very effectively. Maybe the fix could have taken longer than a minute, but if you go through it the right way, maybe you buy the equipment staff some time to get it fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the trip on Chesley in overtime. Again, one of those situations where there's clear contact on the skate. In the slow-mo replay, you can see the shaft flex around the toe box of Chesley's skate. Obviously, some significant contact there. Goes down. You have some players who can play the rush, but they're just not prepared for it. So three things that go the wrong way, and there's a reason why those refs didn't work the rest of the year.
They didn't. I noticed an ECAC crew did work the title game. Did okay. I mean, nothing great. Boy, it's tough because a ref missed a call. You can't call it 10 seconds later when a goal scores. All we can do is, hindsight's 2020. 2 of their non-calls led directly to goals, and maybe even let goalie call when Soulier went out. And poor kid had to come in for just a couple seconds, and he gives up the first goal, which was a deflection. It probably would have gone in at Soulier anyway, but it's just a kind of a mindset. Poor Airy Biggs. That's just not what he needed.
I mean, I think Soulier gave up a goal on a high tip earlier as well.
The first goal,
yes. Yeah. I mean, that was clearly a game plan of UMass to do that. I actually asked the players if that was part of it. And the players like, kind of, sort of. And Greg Carver goes, yeah, coaches get it right sometimes. We study a lot of game film. That was something we wanted to do. We practiced it all week, and they executed it against Minnesota. So, high tip was part of their game plan.
Okay, one thing I see Steve here asking, since when do goalies not get time to fix equipment? That's ridiculous.
Do you know why the goalies don't have time?
Go ahead, Viggs. We heard it straight from one of the guys on the rules committee.
Eric Portillo did some time wasting against Quinnipiac a couple years previously in the NCAA tournament. So as a result of Portillo trying to buy time, they rewrote the rule so that you couldn't adjust your equipment. Now, I think there is a little bit of a difference between fixing versus adjusting, but the refs were not going to have any patience for this kind of situation because it was off an icing where they noticed it. Mason Nevers holding up the cut piece of lace did not seem to influence the refs in any way, and they didn't want to have a discussion with anyone.
Yeah, because Eric Martinson kind of came to us a little after the game. Is like, we just put that rule in over the last season because it's like every 2-year thing. Is it Viggs? They kind of adjust and rules. And he talked to us a couple years ago. He said, "Hey, we want to do this, change the high stick rule." And we saw that this season. It's the shoulders now. It's not the crossbar. And he says that was one of the rules they had just implemented this season.
Portillo getting the Gophers again.
Oh. Yeah, and some of the players we had some texting with back and forth. They weren't really even looking at the referee calls. They thought they had, they maybe should have played better in the third period. And you just mentioned they didn't play great in the first. They played great the first 2 periods, and then they just weren't so great. And I don't know if they're right, but I did notice that some of those guys were like, they certainly were not blaming the refs for the loss.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see
It's a
any
combo.
change
Dude, it's a
to the
combo.
system. I didn't see any change to the system. I asked Greg Carvel, did he see something? He said,
Yeah.
no, our guys just played better. I asked Motzko, anything changed? He's like, no, we weren't on top of our game. The calls weren't going our way. Momentum's not a thing until it is. The players were kind of feeling sorry for themselves a little bit about the calls, but you just have to finish out the game and control what you can control. They tied it up to go to overtime. The first couple shifts of overtime looked okay up until Chesley gets in front of everybody. And in my mind, you get in situations like that, you probably don't want your D leading the rush into a neutral zone trap. When UMass already has 4 players back, there's not a lot of benefit for Chesley to go through that gauntlet. You'd like to see him either get the red and put it deep or headband the puck, let the forwards take the rush, let the D sit back. Usually, in my mindset, the D join the rush. They're not usually starting the rush into a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just a situation where, that got Minnesota in trouble.
Well, it brings me back to you all these years saying, boy, the worst place to lose the puck is the offensive blue line when you're on a rush. And you've been saying it for years. Yes, probably a penalty, but still a same scenario. It's a turnover. All of a sudden they're going the other way and the game is over.
That is a bad part of the rink to make a transition mistake. It just is. Especially when you've got forwards back trying to play the rush and sort it out. That's not their strength. So tough way to end the season. Minnesota didn't play great down the stretch with their Notre Dame playoff series. They had the long layoff. I thought they had a chance to get their legs going, but that third period was not a good one for the fans.
Were they sub 500? They were around 500 those last 10 games. I don't know the exact.
I think they were 5-5-1.
There you go.
To finish the year.
No, it's not a way to finish the season.
No.
Oh boy. So, well, there was a rest of a tournament, Viggs.
I watched most of it.
Yeah, I watched most of it as well. I thought Fargo was a great host. I had a good time up there. No matter what, we ran into people. I ran into Jordan Leopold and Matt Kowalski before the game started. They were there supporting the team. We ran into some GPLers. I don't remember who I saw because some of these guys I just don't know or don't remember. It's just I will always say it, win or lose, it's always fun to get together with other people of the college hockey community.
I do think it would be great to have your campus sites for the first round games, as we saw throughout the NCAA tournament, up and down crowds. Fargo was pretty good for the Gopher game, for the Minnesota State Western Michigan game. The Fargo final did not look like an amazing crowd. You could just imagine that game being at Lawson and just being in front of a crazy lunatic atmosphere. But the nice part about the regionals is seeing all the people.
Yes,
that is a great thing to have. But I do think campus site first rounds would be much better overall. You wouldn't have the ice situations that you had in Manchester and Toledo. You wouldn't have the hometown benefit Penn State got in Allentown.
I put out some smart ass tweets, when Maine lost and when UConn lost, and those got a lot of likes because those are the type of schools that kind of prevented us from going to that type of system. And I just keep thinking, boy, wouldn't it be fun to Penn State goes into Orono. That's a great atmosphere. Or like you said, Mankato having to go up to Lawson, Minnesota, UMass coming to Minnesota, just things like that. But we really want it to happen. And I think what happened this year helps the cause, Vigs. We had quite a few older coaches retire, and we had a couple upper seeds lose to a home team in a regional. 4 seed.
And we heard during the state of the game press conference at the Frozen Four that the coaches are saying, yeah, maybe campus sites for regionals is a good option out west. And I just come back to that going, that's not going to solve all the problems of this current format.
No.
Because what happens if the host who bid on a campus site doesn't make it? What happens if the host loses the first round game and then you have that second round game with no atmosphere? I don't think that'll fix the problem. The campus site for the first one would be great. It would be tremendous atmosphere. It would grow the game of college hockey. It's good for the fans. It's good for the players. It's good for TV. Just don't understand how it's so far away from happening.
Well, Coach Carl, he kind of liked it. Hey, regional weekend like we normally have now, you have those 8 games. And then the following weekend, you have those, last 4 games to determine who goes to Frozen Four, because they've got an off week. You could fit it in. They're always taking, we get those breaks in the middle of the season that just drag out the season even more. Why can't we make this happen?
I'm telling you, I was saying on the X, I want to go down to the coaches convention, have a booth, give out pounders to the coaches, and then they sit in the booth with me for a little bit, and we chat it out, and we try to get their vote, try to lobby.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have to do that one of these.
Do you have
years.
a super PAC going? Yes, Vigo for czar of college hockey.
Might have to figure it out. Talk to my accountant. Maybe I'll talk to our retainer lawyer, Brever, and get that set up.
Brever, yes.
Yeah, he's getting into the NIL space and the GPL space. Why not a super PAC for college hockey campus sites?
So, Western wins a double overtime game against Minnesota State. That was a great game. Got a great saves on both sides, and the overtime caused our game to go late. Who cares? It's great. Our game goes to overtime. Yes, not a great result, and then the Fargo regional turned out to be pretty good. The other regionals turned out to be pretty good. We get BC losing, we get Maine losing, we got UConn losing, we got Cornell almost getting there as well to the Frozen Four. It was still a really fun NCAA tournament.
And once again, not a real great one for the Big Ten. Penn State is the lowest seed of the Big Ten teams getting in. They're the only one to get to the Frozen Four. Ohio State had a great start against BU, and then Turnus turned into a terrible goalie for a little bit, and that game got away from them. Michigan State got goalied a bit by Cornell, and they, one and done there. I hope we're going to see a change to the Big Ten conference tournament format. I've heard from a couple coaches that everybody's kind of coming on board with it. I think, Rawlick and Nightingale got some exposure to what it's like to get in the tournament after the Big Ten tournament. So maybe we'll finally see some change.
Well, who's been in the finals the last couple of years? NCHC, Hockey East seem to meet each other a lot, and they have central tournament when they come down to the final, don't they?
Well, I think they just get it done faster. NCHC is going to campus sites here. Maybe that's going to hurt them down the road, but I think they just get their tournament done faster. The Big Ten really draws it out. One of the teams is on bye in that last week of the year. That doesn't help. There's just a lot of things that don't line up well with the Big Ten schedule.
Got to fix it. I hope they come up with some good ideas, Vigs, because I'm not liking it.
Yep, just get it over a little bit faster so you can get right into the NCAA tournament. Keep everybody playing without getting them fatigued. Because we always talked about like the centralized tournament, it was bad if you played the Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
If you just played the Friday, Saturday, you're fine. But if you played those 3 games, that wasn't a good situation going in. So there's ways to avoid that.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the problem is here in the West, we all like to play Friday, Saturday games. Out East, they play Tuesday games. They move it all around. There's no reason why we couldn't do that for a tournament. I don't know. So we've got Western taking on Denver. Great. It goes into overtime. We have Penn State playing BU. Western just pulls away at the second half of the game, gets it done. Their first national championship. I always like seeing a new time champion, Vigs. Western really came together. They really came together. Ever since that first period in their NCAA championship against Denver, they finally woke up, and from there on, it was them all the way.
I did see a couple DMs in my inbox that some of our listeners saw. I was on the Western train earlier in the season. They put down some future bets on the Broncos to win the NCAA tournament. Congrats to you for listening. I hope you didn't follow my tourney picks for the tournament. I did not pick the regionals very well, but I was on the Western bandwagon all year. And the reason I like them so much is they won tight games and they won blowout games. They didn't really ever have bad weekends. They were very consistent. They had good defense. They got scoring from lots of different guys. And I think that helped them get through the tournament. Alex Bump didn't score in any of the tournament games.
0 points.
They still were able to survive it because they had depth and balance. And they were a team, as Brad Schlossman has been pointing out, no first-round picks, but a lot of guys who developed in college, and they were kind of an older team. And I really think that's a successful roster for college hockey. Is you don't need a lot of first-round picks. Yes, it's nice to have some talent. I mean, the group that the Gophers took down to Tampa was one of the best college hockey teams I've seen. But there was still some inexperience there as well that comes with that talent. And so a team like Western, they can play a real tight checking game and make it really hard for their opponents.
So Western came together, worked out great. It didn't take long after the Gopher season, though, Vigs, for quite a few players to disappear. What do we got? We got Snuggerud, Renzel, Moore, Wood, Chesley. We've got, Kurth. They scattered pretty quickly, Vigs.
Yeah, and this has kind of been a trend in college hockey for a lot of early departures this year. They're more than usual. And I don't think many of these guys are ready to go right into the NHL. Snuggerud, yes, he was ready to go to NHL. Renzel, so much upside, but a lot of mistakes still. And maybe Chicago is going to let him figure it out in the NHL. But like Levshinov, the defenseman they drafted from Michigan State, he's played a lot in the AHL this year. So I think, they're not afraid to send guys down. That's probably going to happen to him at some point next year. Oliver Moore. I don't think Oliver Moore is ready to be a top 6 center in the NHL. Maybe he's going to be a bottom 6 winger, but he's probably going to have to play some AHL hockey before he gets there. And that's the same thing for Chesley, Kurth, and Wood. Like, they are not ready to step into NHL lineups, and it's their choice to sign. They think that they're ready to be pro hockey players. It just might not be where they think they belong. And that's one of the issues with a team like this is you have all these guys, they have these aspirations, these goals, but it's not going to come as easy as I think they view it right now.
Well, yeah, like I said, some of them were, we kind of knew was happening. We even kind of wondered about a few others that might decide to go. But luckily, knock on wood, no others have. We'll talk more about the portal a little bit later and what's going to happen with that. But they do have a lot of spots to fill, Vigs. You also got Soulier, Kester, Nevers, Huglin, Michael, all, they're done. They're graduated. The roster's a little thin right now, and we'll talk about the ads, like I said, later, but still kind of a gut punch after a gut punch of a game, Viggs.
Yeah, and this just might be a symptom of a team that wasn't ready to go all in. When you have these guys who are looking to leave, that's tough on the brain as they start to listen to their advisors. They listen to the skills coaches from the NHL team. That's a lot for a young player to handle, and it's a distraction. And Minnesota does have a pretty open policy to these NHL teams because they know they have so many NHL draft picks on their roster. But I think it was certainly a distraction this season as they got down to the end.
So maybe that when Kurth was kind of needling you about the summer when they all got together, maybe it wasn't such a big deal.
Apparently it wasn't. Apparently they just wanted to hang out. It wasn't about winning an NCAA title. Because this was a team that didn't rise to the challenge.
Yes.
The team that went to Tampa, they had leaders like Lacombe and Faber and Nyes, who I think steered the ship in the right direction. And I think this year it was a little bit harder for Nevers, Hughlin, and Kester to steer the ship in the right direction. They had a lot of players who were kind of looking at the other shorelines as they were moving along. And that's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to see.
It definitely is. But we're gonna move forward here. We're gonna start moving towards the next season, Viggs. That's all we can do. Only one team gets to celebrate every year. Only one team. Just happens to be another NCHC team, Viggs, and they've won like a billion of them so far, haven't they?
Yeah, even in a down year for NCHC, they still had
I
two
saw
of the
that
better
video.
teams in the
Down
Frozen
year,
Four.
down year. I was hoping they wouldn't have grabbed like a tweet from me or you or something like that. I was like, oh, look at it closely, make sure we're not on that little hype video. Oh,
but I mean, Big Ten has had the best non-conference schedule of any league the last 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Usually the NCHC is right there with them. This year they're not. It was a tough year for them.
And I would say Minnesota's was light too. Big Ten overall was good. I thought Minnesota was light, but that'll change next year. At North Dakota, we've got BC, we've got DU at Denver. We don't really know what the BC thing is. We've got Duluth at home. Oh boy, I'm kind of curious about them. But before we get going any further, we need to talk about some of our sponsors here in Viggs. I got right off the top, Elevated Beer, Wine, and Spirits.
Yeah, if you're into craft beer, craft spirits, craft bourbons, allocated bourbons, Elevated Beer, Wine, and Spirits might be a spot for you. A couple local guys from White Bear. They've got 2 stores, one up in White Bear, one in Minneapolis. Ryan and Tom do a great job with their store. If you're looking for staple stuff like Mick Golden Light, Bud, Miller, Coors, you can get 24 packs of that for $17.99. If you want your black box wine, 3 liter, it's $13.99. Most other places around $20 and up for those things. So if you're looking for something to drink, check out Elevated Beer, Wine, and Spirits.
And of course, Cub Foods, Viggs. That is your grocery store, definitely.
I am down to my Quarry Cub all the time. I've been getting the Sumo citrus oranges. They're right there when you come in. They've got all kinds of stuff. If you've got parties, we're starting to get to like grilling season. You need some pub burgers.
Yeah.
Check out Cub. They've got all kinds of different ones you get. You can get spicy ones, cheesy ones. You get the bratwursty ones if you want. Get crazy party trays. If you want your Jimmy's, go to Cub. They're going to have it. They're starting to do Jimmy's coleslaw there. You can find them at Cub. They also have some liquor stores now, so you can make all your stops in one. If you want delivery, check out Cub.com. If you want pickup, Cub.com. They're one of us. Check them out.
Yeah, definitely check them out. You've got one store. I've got 2. I'm Chaska and Shakopee. It depends on where I'm at. I'm coming home or out just looking for certain stuff. Fiber, Gateway Fiber, Viggs. They're taking over the northern part of the cities, aren't they?
Yeah, we rely on fiber for our podcast. We're both high-speed internet guys. If you live in Blaine, Brooklyn Park, Champlin, Coon Rapids, Maple Grove, Plymouth, Gateway Fiber is there and available for you. You don't have to feel like you're stuck with Xfinity, that big 800-pound gorilla company just messing with you. Don't do that. Check out Gateway Fiber. We did the fiber to the fish house. Everything went smooth, and they're expanding into more spots in Minnesota. Check them out.
That was a fun event out on the lake there in Maple Grove. Fun time. And of course, we're going to finish with Lunch Bucket Hockey with us all season long, Vigs.
Gotta love Lunch Bucket. When Jack Ramsey needs a jersey for his team to go out to Vail, who do they look for? LunchBucketHockey.com.
Yeah.
If you want to support a local company that's got an apparel brand for the grit and grind player, Lunch Bucket Hockey's for you. There are a couple local guys who did Friday lunchtime retired pickup hockey, and they just evolved it into a brand. If you need custom jerseys for anything, check them out, LunchBucketHockey.com.
And of course, we thank all of the sponsors of the GPL podcast for being with us all season long. Vigs, your final top 20 of the year. Of course, it's going to pretty much follow what happened. I noticed you did put Denver up above Boston University, probably because they gave Western a much better game.
Yeah, I thought Denver was a really tough team down the stretch. Anytime you have a team that goes to the championship game, there is a little bit of a hangover effect. So I think they just want to skip to the end of the year. But in fact, you have to play to get there. And we saw some of Denver's best hockey down the stretch in the NCHC tournament. And then in the NCAA tournament, they looked really solid. Played a great game against Western. Maddie Davis, great goaltending again for the Pioneers.
Jeez, was he
just
good.
Not enough to get past.
He kept them
Western.
in that game. He did. Those first 2 periods, he kept them in it.
Just like he did last year. You
Yep.
know, all the talk about Z William, Maddie Davis is probably the MVP for Denver.
Boston University, Boston College. You put them above Penn State, but of course, you put the rest of those Big Ten down below what? Minnesota number 8.
Just the way that Minnesota finished this year was frustrating. To go 5-5-1,
yeah,
and to lose the games the way they did, just fell off their peak in the middle of the year. You know, you look at a team, Minnesota, they had 3 losses the first half. And in 2 of those games, they got goalied, you know, Omaha and Bemidji. And the third one was against Michigan State when the lineup was completely depleted. Lots of injuries, lots of illness.
Gave up those goals late, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great first half for them. They had an okay January, February, March. You know, just tough end for the Gophers, and that's why they drop in my pool.
Anything else jump out for you? Obviously, Cornell finished pretty strong, and you know, we're not fond of the coach and how he, you know, picks things and wants to keep everything, you know, at regionals and stuff. But he's retiring now, and boy, he did good in his final games.
Yep, that team played hard for him down the stretch,
gosh,
and
did they.
you know, I got to see them in the tournament, and they looked like a real solid team, knocking off Michigan State. Was quite the achievement for them. They almost pulled it off to get to a Frozen Four, just coming up a little bit short. Bentley, I mean, that was a surprise. They almost took out Boston College in the first round. That would have been quite the upset. And then, you know, the other disappointing team in the tournament was Ohio State. We talked about their game against BU a little bit earlier. You know, Turnus just did not have a good game when they needed it.
And they started so strong in that game. They completely dominated that first period. And then I go to leave for the rink. All of a sudden, it was like 6-3 or all of a sudden it was like, I'm like, what happened in just a few minutes?
Yeah, they just needed a couple saves from their goalies to get through a dip in their play, and they didn't get them.
I'm glad you did the polls this year. It was fun, Viggs.
Yeah, it was fun. It made me a little more aware of college hockey.
Yeah,
big picture this year, and it got me to watch a few games on ESPN Plus and check out some CCHA games as the season went on, and it was fun to do. Hope people enjoyed it.
Well, just yesterday, we had kind of heard rumblings that Bob Motzko was going to be the U.S. coach for the junior tournament coming here and in the Twin Cities this December and January, and it is official. He is now the coach. But I know we have a text about this. Oh, yes. Bjorn here wants comments all on how awful Motzko takes after this World Junior. I mean, people were just like, oh, he's the worst coach ever. I'm like, do you not remember he got a gold medal?
Moscow is a player's coach. As a player, you usually enjoy playing for him. His practices are fun. He preaches offense. He does a lot of development work over the year. If you're a young player, there's few programs you can go to where you're going to get opportunities to play special teams, top six, minutes, have good line mates. He doesn't shelter those guys. He gives them opportunities, and if you perform, he gives you more. And the World Juniors is always a players' tournament. It's groups of guys who are coming together for a couple weeks to win one of these things. Now, I do think the U.S. development program has helped teams gel faster, but there's still going to be other guys that you're going to try to integrate in as you find the best players for that age group. And he's been able to do it in the past.
Steve Miller's been the assistant coach quite often. Can he even pick Steve Miller, Killer, to be on his staff? Because then it leaves Minnesota with very little staff, because I'm guessing they're going to have some games around that time. They're not going to take that much time off, Eags.
I don't know. Sometimes you send assistant coaches on the road when you have games anyway.
Yeah.
And everything's going to be here in the Twin Cities for travel. So
yeah, but the games won't be, any Gopher games will be gone. They're going to, Mariucci will not be able to be used for 2 weeks or whatever it is.
I am interested to see the schedule this year.
I am too.
I think Steve Miller is a lock to be on the staff.
You think so?
And the Gophers will figure it out. Yep.
Really?
It's too big of an opportunity not to have those guys on staff.
Wow. Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see. It's gonna be fun to see. U.S. team.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yes. I'm here. It's gonna be. Go ahead.
They're gonna have the summer camp this summer at Mariucci, where they bring in the 2 Canada teams, the 2 U.S. teams. Usually they bring in like a Sweden and Finland team, and there's like a summer tournament. So USA Hockey will have about 40 players there. Canada will have about 40 players there. It's kind of like a draft evaluation camp as well. So there'll be a lot of scouts here in the Twin Cities for that opportunity.
Should be fun. I love the junior tournament, and it's here. I hear it's tough to get credentials for it because, God, I even heard they don't allow blog sites to do it. I'm like, we'll try. That's all you can do. We'll try. Maybe Craig Floor could sneak us in Mariucci for at least, because I know Canada is going to be at Mariucci in there, or that pool is going to be in Mariucci, aren't they? We heard that recently, that Pool B or whatever is going to be all at Mariucci until they start playing the playoff round. So have to wait and see. Wait and see. All right, I got a couple other questions here. No, I think that one's a little less important because we already kind of talked about that, but we got one more here.
I will touch on that just a little bit.
Okay.
In the Quinnipiac game in Tampa, the Gophers definitely did pull back just a little bit with their style. They were very concerned with getting the puck into the neutral zone, chipping it deep. What happened in that game is I think guys had shifts that got overextended and they weren't able to connect shifts. And so all the times they put the puck in the Quinnipiac zone, they were right back to playing defense again. And that just kind of, became a cycle. Against UMass, I don't think it was the same situation. I think Minnesota just didn't make key plays defensively when they needed to. The calls definitely went against them and put them in some tough spots. But on those high tips, that's just Minnesota's D-zone coverage not being active enough and not playing high enough out from the crease. And that's something that Greg Carvel and UMass saw, is that Minnesota didn't button up their D-zone coverage well enough all the time. They had defenders who would get kind of caught puck watching and leave space up high. And I think that was more the issue than anything else style-wise.
All right. And then we had Jason here, really interested in recruits, perhaps portal needs, another big roster turnover this year. And well, let's talk about it, Vigs. So far, Minnesota hasn't lost anybody to the portal, which is good. But they have picked up a couple players from the portal. Tanner Ludke from Omaha, forward, and hold on here. Luca DePasquo.
We will learn it better as the season approaches. But a Michigan kid
Yeah.
who was looking for a net to play in when Trey Augustine announced he was coming back. I mean, Michigan State, they get Isaac Howard, the Hobie Baker winner, coming back, and Trey Augustine coming back in goal. Michigan State's going to be tough next year. They have a significant NIL budget, which I think is helping make those cases for those players to come back. So,
how is that NIL
good
budget for Western?
Not really a deal, but they don't need it. That's not their kind of player.
Yeah, I saw somebody put that out there. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, and they still got it together. So it's maybe not as important as you think. It's I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right players, right, Felix?
Exactly. And Western Michigan found that way to get the championship. Denver, for the most part, Zeev is obviously a first-round pick, but that's usually not their style. Mikey Burchild, who committed to Denver, probably a first-round pick type guy. But their whole roster doesn't have a lot of guys like that. They just pick a couple.
Oh, boy. The soda pod. When will Misa be on campus?
I got to sell some pizzas and raise some money for Dickeytown athletes to get that to happen. I don't think Misa and McKenna are marriage bound as much fun as it would be. The one thing with the CHL players, a lot of those guys aren't comfortable announcing that they're coming to college hockey. We've seen a couple of them announce
they're still
it.
playing. A lot of them are still playing, right?
A lot of them are still playing.
Yeah.
So it's not like the USHL where all these players are like, oh, yeah, obviously I'm going to college hockey. Here's my commitment. Put it on the line chart. I think the CHL guys are a little bit more, I want to finish out my season, get home to my family, make sure I can get accepted to the school, and then announce the commitment. So we will see there.
So tell me about Tanner Ludke. He was kind of injured last year, but the season before that, he was really good for Omaha. Lakeville kid. And now he may be able to bring in or flip some recruits at Mankato. What's going on with that?
I don't know if he's necessarily flipping the commits
or helping.
Mankato. He's probably helping, but
because there's a certain name in Mankato they fear is leaving. Dan Myers is already freaking out.
But I would say like he's one of the top ads out of the portal. He was injured last year. He's a big player. I think he can play center for Minnesota, which is a big need for the Gophers. I think they were a little short on that this season. And so having somebody who can fill that spot's important. Bigger player. He did commit to Omaha, I think, when he was in like 8th grade. So he was one of those early commits because he had an older brother who was committed there. So, one of those kids reflects, says Minnesota's the spot for him. Minnesota has a lot of holes. Having a few veterans in the lineup will definitely help. So it's a good ad for Minnesota.
And then we talked about Luca and goal. I think they're both going to be juniors, him and Ari. So like maybe both stay, and then maybe that third goalie their senior year is a new guy. Hopefully, is that kind of? I mean, I'm just assuming that's kind of what Bob is going to do. They'll have to bring in a young guy because Weiss is basically a practice goalie. I don't think we're going to see him in a game unless it's a exhibition game. So we
always said that about closer, though, didn't we? But I do think having Arian Pasquo, we'll figure it out. Luca, let's just go with Luca for now. I think it gives them competition in that both goalies won a lot of games this year. Obviously, Luca didn't get as many starts with Trey ahead of him. So I think it's good to have some healthy competition in goal.
The portal's open until May 15th. They do allow, players in late in case a coach leaves. So they do allow that flexibility. Right now, it looks like there's 170 players available, roughly. People always being added today all over the place. I would say it's going to be an interesting year for a lot of those players. It's going to be an interesting summer because a lot of these teams are going to be waiting until they see what's going on with the CHL players. I mean, you look at Omaha lost a ton of guys to the portal. And I don't think they've really added anybody from the portal yet. So,
And the roster limit thing is not official with the NCAA settlement yet. So capping the roster at 26, there's a lot of teams in college hockey that typically carry way more than 26 players. And you have some schools that are carrying 30, 32 players, especially in Atlantic hockey. They're going to wait and see what's going to happen. And I don't think there's a lot of talent in the portal. Like you look at the GPL portal page, scrolling through there, I don't see any top 6 forwards or top 4D for Big Ten NCHC schools. So there's not a lot out there right now. I do think we will see a little bit of a wave here in the coming weeks as teams kind of finish their exit meetings. Maybe we see some coach movement. Some coaches are prospects for pro coaching positions, especially in the changing world of college athletics.
Yeah.
Some guys want to move on. I think Minnesota last year wishes they might have had a couple roster spots later in the season of portal to perhaps add some guys who won a national championship at Western Michigan. They would have looked really good in maroon and gold, but Minnesota had already made all their decisions by the time Grant Patolny left Northern Michigan and the Soskinski brothers were moving on. So,
knock on wood, none of the current Gophers have jumped into the portal. I guess we could still see some, couldn't we?
I think some people were concerned about Max Rudd going in the portal after he redshirted this year. Whipple is a player who didn't play much the second half. People are concerned about him. Axel Begley, is also a bottom of the lineup player. But the fact that they're still with Minnesota, I think means that they might stick through and provide some depth for the Gophers.
A lot of
two other players we didn't.
A lot of opportunity on the defense area.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to have a lot of minutes for Cal Thomas, who's coming back. Luke Middlestat, Leo Gruba. I mean, that's a good core of defensemen to start with. I think if you start mixing in Begley, Rudd, Whipple, maybe Rombach as your freshman, maybe Maceo Phillips as your other freshman. I don't know if there's room for both of those guys to come. One of them might need another year of juniors before coming to college hockey. If you have all those guys back, it gives you some depth. I do think the Gophers would like another top 4 veteran defenseman to add to this group. But if it's not there, they're going to stick with recruits and players that they trust.
And do we know which recruits are coming in right now? We really don't.
We don't. It's interesting. I think it's a little bit of a holding pattern. A lot of the players that the staff wants to come have signed their NLIs. National letter of intent, different than NIL. So they're committed and they have spots for next year. But I think some of the players might benefit by playing another year of juniors. That's still a little up in the air until they figure out their roster.
Well, okay, I'm just going what we have on our page of players who have signed their NLI. Grimes?
Yep, Grimes is one of those players. Like he could sit in the lineup next year or he could play another year of junior. Hard to know.
Yeah, and we've got there you go. Kvasnica?
Skilled forward. He's had some injury issues this year. Good player though. Could definitely be an offensive help for the Gophers. But another year of junior wouldn't be bad for him.
There's Rombach, 6'6", and it was 201 when I added his weight there earlier. But that's a big kid.
Yeah, I think his best hockey is ahead of him, but he might be the most ready of the deep commits to come in and play.
LJ Mooney. He sounds like he's
super skilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's coming in. He'll be, a second, third round, maybe fourth round pick because of his size and injury. But definitely a player who's going to help the Gophers, especially on the power play. The Gophers are going to have a lot of power play time open next year, and they need some guys who are creative and can add to that. LJ is one of those players.
There's Javon Moore. Another big kid.
Toolsy power forward, yeah. Has a lot of skill, a lot of talent. Sometimes his hockey IQ is still developing, but he's got a lot of tools that you like in a player. and he can be a physical guy.
There's Maceo that you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Maceo could benefit with some more time. I
Mhm.
think sometimes guys like him get in the development team program and they get pigeonholed a little bit and they don't develop their game to really come into college hockey playing confident. He could use another year. And I've heard perhaps major junior might be an option for a player like him. He's got big size, he's physical. It could be an opportunity for him to extend his junior career and really get that side of his game going.
Townsend.
Yep. Not overly big, but a competitive player. He's played very well in the USHL this year, and I think he's coming in next year.
Oh, so you do think so? And that's just it.
Yeah.
It's we could think somebody's coming in. And we might just not know for a while here, Viggs. It's I put up a roster for next season of how it is right now. The players coming back and the 2 portal guys that have been added. But other than that, there's no official word really on anybody, is there?
No. And I think of the guys that we had on the future commits, Mason Moe is probably the most likely of that next group.
Mhm.
If, the Gophers feel they're short,
Mhm.
he's a player that they might grab like they did with Jimmy Clark
Yeah.
or with Brody Lamb. They kind of brought those guys in maybe a little earlier than they thought they were going to bring them in, but it just made sense. Sometimes you don't want to go in the portal and just take a guy to take a guy.
Mhm.
You want to have guys you like.
When will there be any resolution on the roster number? Do we know?
I feel like it's supposed to be coming this month. The judge on
they
the
got to know.
case
They got to know.
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the revenue sharing component
Well,
of that.
They got to know, and just like we got to know what the schedule is for next year, Viggs, right? No, we got to know. And you found out later some of them weren't even decided until weeks before the season.
Yes, not finalized until weeks before the
Yeah.
season. So, a lot of this stuff they're making it up as they go, Jude.
Yeah. So what's the next season outlook look for you? Is it a rebuilding season, or it's like rebuild? We don't rebuild, we reload, but a lot of just so many unknowns right now. Can you even really look into the future for next year?
Well, one thing about next year, there's no more fifth-year seniors.
Mm-hmm.
There's no grad transfers. So I think all of college hockey is almost going to take a little bit of a step back there because you're going to have a lot of turnover on teams. Now, you look at North Dakota, I think they're still looking for 2 top 6 forwards right now. And those guys aren't in the portal, so they're going to have to develop those guys either through recruiting or CHL. And those CHL players are 20, just like the guys coming out of the USHL. I think there's just like this mystique about major junior and how high of a level it is. It's a little bit more advanced than the USHL, but it's the same age players. So you're still bringing up young kids to fill spots. College hockey is a man's game. And I just think the whole spectrum of college hockey is going to look a little bit different next year. And while people are a little bit nervous about the line chart for Minnesota, there are talented players there. Like the Brody Lamb that we saw in the first half of the season could be a 40-point player very easily. Leo Gruba was kind of pigeonholed behind a couple players this year. He was the USHL defenseman of the year. With the more ice time he gets next year, maybe he fills the role of Sam Renzel, maybe better than Sam Renzel did, because Renzel kind of peaked at midseason and then struggled in the second half. So there are pieces to be excited about. Luke Mittelstadt is one of the most consistent players for the Gophers. He'll get an elevated role next year.
Yeah.
Cal Thomas, super reliable defenseman. He's probably going to play more minutes next year than he did all this year, and consistent minutes as well.
I think those 2 should be the captains, by the way, not 15 captains. A couple captains, maybe 1 or 2 C's or 2 A's. Let's try to tamper it. What was there, 7 this year?
I think
there was a
6.
lot. There's 6.
There's a lot.
There was a lot.
I would be surprised if Thomas, Lamb, and Mittelstadt aren't the captains. Those seem like the 3 obvious ones.
You got it right there. Listen to the commissioner, folks. The commissioner knows.
Teams vote on captains, but it just
I
seems
know.
like those three are the most vocal and the most leader-like out of the group. So we'll see what happens.
Well, the season didn't end so great, Vigs, but we just completed the 14th season of the GPL podcast, looking for season number 15 in the fall. We've been doing this a long time, kid.
Yeah, we have. It's always fun. I really wish the season would have ended differently than it did. It was really fun to be in Fargo. I was taking some hot laps around the rink between periods and throughout the game, and all of our followers and listeners that came up and said hi just warms the heart. This is a fun thing for us to do. It's an enjoyable freelancing side hustle thing that we do, and the fans really make it super enjoyable when we go to these rinks
and
see
all the people watching
fans
live right now. I mean, there's a lot of people watching live right now and plenty of comments, and we appreciate all of you. We definitely do. So we're looking forward to season number 15, Biggs. Let's go, huh?
Let's go. We're going to Vegas, right? Vegas, baby. Vegas,
baby. Well, like I said, we appreciate all of you who watch live, listen later on, however you absorb our material. We appreciate you more than you'll ever know. That's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast and the season finale. For those of you watching live, stay tuned for some overtime. We still got a little bit left here, but for the rest of you, we will catch you next season on the GPL podcast. All right, what do you got there for us tonight, Viggs?
GPL podcast beer of the week comes from Drecker up in Fargo. It was one of the highlights of the trip. This is called Narfel, the Garthok. I don't know. It's got a lot of words to describe it. It's an imperial stout aged 24 months in old elk bourbon barrels with banana, peanut butter, cacao nibs, cinnamon, marshmallows, graham cracker, milk sugar, and honey. It's a lot. A lot going on here.
Wow.
But Drecker, if you're in the Fargo area, black as the night, loaf of bread. This is like 14%.
Off-season OT is the best OT. I don't know about that, Mote. But then we got Steve saying incorrect. Jupe getting plastered the night before Thanksgiving is the OT is the best.
That is a solid show that I think everyone looks forward to all year.
Oh, he says, "Let it fly, boys." Bye. Oh,
you love something,
course,
let it go.
Who loves the beer? Of course,
Scotty. Yeah, this is interesting. There's a little bit of a banana. Yeah, there's a banana like s'more-ness to this.
Weird.
I mean, it's delicious. It's kind of candy like. So.
Did you read that text from Deutsch? Jeez. Kissing fans ass is pathetic. Thanks, Deutsch.
I mean,
hey, without the fans, we're not here. Without the fans, without the hockey fans, there's no Gopher hockey. Without any fans of any sports team, they don't exist. So,
as Liam Soulier says, it's a show. We are entertainers.
Let us entertain
We're here to put on a show. Yeah, we're here to put on a show. It's a pretty good show. I liked doing it. Liam's closing words.
right in front of us, when that goalie thing happened. The camera didn't catch it, but when that goal went in right away on Airy and Liam was there, he was so angry, V's. I mean, I wasn't sure if it was his blocker or his glove, but he just slammed it down. He was very angry.
Yeah.
Oh, that was not good.
I was really surprised, like, once I heard the whole story about it, how it was handled. And then talking to some people in the business about it, it's no surprise that those refs were done for the year. Like, you just can't handle situations like that in that big a moment. And you saw in the Frozen Four, it was handled very differently. Like, they're like, hey, hurry up. You don't have all the time in the world, but we're going to give you a minute here to fix what needs to be fixed.
And, you saw the comments. Once you mentioned Portillo in the comments, they were blowing up.
I know. As soon as I heard that from my contact about it, I was just like, oh, that's not going to make anyone in Minnesota feel better. That Portillo still is screwing the Gophers. It's too bad.
Oh, boy. I kind of giggle. I just have to giggle. I mean, it's completely out of our control. It's
but you got to control what you can control.
yes.
I was not super impressed with the locker room after the game being so down about the officials and the calls instead of how they responded. Because you can never control the officials. Like, you just can't. Like, they're trying to get it right, but they don't. They don't all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to overcome that. And it's just distressing that it got in their head so much in those situations that, you see the hands go up and the skates stop. You can't do that.
Play
like, the game
the
is
whistle.
too important.
Play to the
game
whistle.
is too important. The game is too important to get distracted.
How many?
It's the same thing when you miss the net. If you miss the net and you look at the sky, you're behind the play. Get the next shot. Win the puck back.
I did see a couple crews. I think they worked 2 games in the regionals. I did see a couple guys out there. So
I was just trying to see, did any of them work the Frozen Four?
No, they did not.
No, I didn't think so, which was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, because they could have worked they could have at least worked Denver and I think
Denver Western.
Yeah.
Jeremy Tufts and Jeff Miller, not Big Ten refs.
I've always thought if 2 teams in the same league play, they should use the league refs. I don't see any problem with that. I don't know what, obviously they don't like to do that. And there was some controversy. Was it Fargo? Was it because they were mostly CCHA refs, but they had worked some NCHC games. I believe the bulk of the games have to be from another league, and they were, but those guys had done some NCHC games, which was kind of odd, but where was
Did I text that to you that I found out how many games you have to work to
Wasn't
be
it like 18 or did you?
Yeah, I found out. I'm sure this is fun for everybody to see me scroll.
Hey,
back
this is overtime, man.
messages.
This is what overtime's about.
I
It's
know.
about more casual. It's about just chilling, man. I wonder if we put Dan Woog to sleep yet. You still awake? Still awake. Well, he said he's got some, old man hockey at 5:30. I'm like, we played old man hockey at night. I don't want to do it in the morning. I could never do that. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's 18 league games to be considered a league official for the NCAA tournament. So that seems high to me for some reason.
That's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games, but that's what it takes to be an official for. That's why I think there was a CCHA NCHC question mark in Fargo, It's like they're not actually NCHC officials because they didn't work 18 games. So
Yeah. So, was it something that those refs did so bad that they weren't going to do anything in that regional again? I mean, they were ECAC, so in theory, they could have reffed that championship game.
yeah,
No, everyone says, oh, they were kicked out. We don't really know for sure if they were kicked out of the regional. Were they?
they were replaced.
Okay.
They were replaced for the championship game because they lost the confidence of the on-site staff. And this is a crew that had done a Frozen Four before. So they were highly thought of in the officiating circles. But they just blew that game and made a mistake. And, players make mistakes in big games too.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And the refs clearly, we always talk about this, especially with the Gophers down the stretch, is, if the refs don't make the call because they don't want to influence the game, they are influencing the game. They're letting players take liberties that are not called, and the game changes. And I definitely thought this down the stretch for Minnesota is they were always the team that was having a negative impact out of those situations rather than taking advantage of them and maybe taking a few more liberties and pushing the line. They were always the one where the line was being pushed onto them. And that's a mindset.
Yeah.
That's a mindset. You have to realize if it's prison rules hockey, okay, I'm going to take more liberties. I'm not going to expect to get calls, and I'm going to be more aggressive. That's a mindset change that I think every once in a while you have to figure out. And it's almost like, okay, let's run some practices where there are no penalties. Don't be cheap, don't injure each other, but you can hook, you can hold, you can grab, you can interfere. Let's play through that and get used to it.
Did we have any Atlantic refs? I feel like I haven't seen them in years. I'm not really sure.
I don't know if I saw any Atlantic crews in the games I was watching. That's a good question, Max.
Yeah. And then
I feel like we see CCHA refs every once in a while.
Jet Fisher, is there any Gophers? I think we've got kind of what we wanted out of the portal so far. I don't know how much they'll hit it unless they just need something to fill a spot late. I
don't think they're going to fill a spot in the portal. I think they are saving a spot or two, one up front, one on defense for either recruit or somebody who fits the bill of a top 4D or a top 6 forward. They're not just going to take anybody. So if there's a coaching transition for a prominent team and some of those players want to leave, Minnesota has room for one of those players.
Yeah. And those players can be added to the portal after the deadline of May 15th. They are allowed to.
So I think whether or not Minnesota wants to say this or not, I think they would be interested in a CHL player if it fit. If they have one spot and they're looking for some talent and they don't get it in a portal guy, I think it would make a lot of sense. I don't think they're going to get Misa or Gavin McKenna, but there could be somebody else that would fit the bill.
And, we are hearing a lot of money being thrown around, yet no one can confirm anything.
And we think we're hearing that agents and players and parents are maybe inflating some of the numbers that are being rumored out there. Because I don't think there's more than 5 teams that have more than $400,000 budgeted. From what I can gather, like to be a top NIL team, $500,000 in your entire budget would be big for hockey. And I think Michigan State has that budget.
Because, from what we've heard, was the North Dakota freshman, I'm blanking on his name right now. He was talking about leaving in February or something like that. Or somebody in North Dakota say, hey, I'm going to be out of here. Some kind of tampering going on? Is there? Are there rules against tampering these days, or is it the old gentleman agreement is just way gone and they just
I think the majority of the tampering is coming from agents going, if
yes.
my player were to go in the portal, would you have any interest?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in hockey, more than any other sport, the players line up their ducks in a row before they jump in the water.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you see kids put themselves as do not contact in the portal. Like there was a CC guy, this defenseman, I think, jumped in the portal today and had a do not contact. It was the first time I actually went in and put a little padlock by his name on the portal list. So yeah.
I've been busy today. I didn't
I
have a
bet.
chance to look at the portal yet today.
I think something is going to happen with the portal because now you're seeing the big time sports, football especially now. A lot of people are starting to push back. Some Tennessee quarterback wants to, he wants more money. He wants millions of dollars. He's not going to play this year. And you've got a pro quarterback. I've forgotten his name, saying, "What are you doing? This is not how." I mean, you got a lot of coaches getting frustrated. Could NIL be a short-term thing?
No. There are always people who want to hand money to players to go to their school.
Yeah, but
especially in football and basketball.
Yeah, but look at these coaches. I don't think they want to mess with it. I don't know. It's just coaches have so much power and a lot of boosters. I don't know. It's just, the NCAA is losing a lot. And it's going to start getting worse before it gets better, Viggs, I think.
I mean, NIL is not a big part of college hockey. It's just not. And I don't think it's going to be.
What do you mean? What was it, that CHL kid? He wants $1 million to go to BC or something like that. Yeah, no, he's not.
I don't think that kind of money's out there.
No,
I think what we're going to see in college hockey is you're going to start to see revenue share and NIL pay for 26 scholarships at the big schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have a couple $100,000 on top of that. And I think if I was a coach, I would spend that money to get an extra year out of a Jimmy Snuggerud or a Brock Faber or an Isaac Howard or Trey Augustine. That is money well spent. Spending money on Cullen Potter to come to ASU early is not money well spent. Paying money for Michael Miso to come in as a young player and play 1 year for your program is not money well spent. The guys who can win you titles are usually those guys who are third and fourth year type players.
And that's what Bob wants to do. He doesn't want to spend money to get guys here. He wants to spend money on guys who are committed to a program, who are already here.
Who are already invested and have shown that they're invested. Like spending money on this Tennessee quarterback is not money well spent usually because it doesn't do a lot for your program. It does a lot for him. And it maybe wins you a bunch of games, but it probably doesn't win you championships.
Mm-hmm.
I think what PJ Fleck is doing with Gopher football, he's investing in guys to stay. He has enough money to compete with people who are trying to lure his players away, but he's not going out and just buying players because it's hard to be sustainable, especially at a place like Minnesota when you have a limited budget to do it that way. And I think college hockey is going to find that same recipe works better.
So explain this to me a little bit about how the money is going to work. So Minnesota is going to take advantage. It's going to be 26 players, 27, whatever they come to a number with. They all get full scholarships. What does that include? Is that all of their schooling, all of their room and board, all of their meals? Is it basically just cover kind of everything? And how is that different than now? Because now, I get 7/8 and one kid gets, 3/8 and whatever. How much of that stuff, like, are they already getting food most of the time covered, no matter if they're getting a scholarship or not? How does all that kind of work and come together?
Yeah, like the food stuff is all paid for by the school. Like
Okay.
the athlete village, like they have money that they had budgeted
Okay.
for that. When they go on the road, they get their catered meals, all that stuff. But right now, I think it's 17 scholarships to be divided up by all the roster spots. And so that can change from time to time how much percentage you get.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you're going to see is that revenue share money that, the $21 million that Power 4 schools get to distribute. For hockey, it's going to fund those 26 scholarships.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that, because it's, I think it's like 35,000 a player, and they already have 17, so another 9 is about another 300,000.
Mhm.
So I think that's how that money is going to be used. And then the players don't have to pay taxes on that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was revenue share outside of tuition,
Mm-hmm.
that is taxable. So like money from Dickeytown athletes that would go to hockey players,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes taxable if it's not for the room and board funds. So that sounds like what Denver wants to do. That sounds like what North Dakota wants to do. They want to fully fund all the scholarships.
Yeah, and North Dakota's not participating the first year. I think they from what we heard, they want to kind of see how things work out and maybe start the following year.
But I think they'll use their NIL money to fully fund all the scholarships.
Yep.
I think that's kind of what their goal is. So, and it sounds like the NHL is reworking their deal with junior leagues and college hockey with how they kind of fund player development because of the rule changes with major junior players being able to play college. So I think there's going to be some money coming from the NHL into the coffers of the USHL and maybe some college teams potentially as well.
Okay. A lot changing.
Because I think from an NHL standpoint, you would rather have some of these guys who are 20 go play a year or two of college rather than have to take an ECHL or AHL roster spot.
Yeah.
If you have a guy who's 20, he's not ready to play top 6 minutes or run a power play, maybe send him to Western Michigan for a year or two, figure it out that way.
Next year's schedule, we kind of we know some of it. Well, I saw you had looked at the Duluth contract that was done a while ago, and it looked like it was going to be the 17th and 18th of October, and now we're hearing that North Dakota is 17th and 18th of October.
I would trust Brad knows better than I do.
Yeah, so we're assuming that's changed. So the only game I have right now, games I've got at North Dakota that weekend, and I've got at Denver probably the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. It depends on the NHL schedule.
I think I heard Thanksgiving for that because I think it's going to be at Ball Arena.
Ball Arena. It's going to be it'll be Thanksgiving week. It'll be Friday or Saturday. I doubt the Avalanche would be home for both those days, so they're probably just kind of waiting to see where it goes. But that's all we really know. I mean, we've heard BC is coming. Are they coming? We even heard rumors that BC and BU were going to come and maybe do like a Wisconsin thing where one plays one night and then they switch to play the other night. We just don't know really anything.
Yeah, we don't know yet. I'll start using my FOIAs, but until those contracts are signed, I don't have access to that.
Yeah.
And last year, the contracts didn't get signed until August.
Yeah.
And September.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they figured that out as a trick. It's like, we'll gentlemen's agreement agree to this, but because Vigo is going to request the contracts, we're going to wait to sign them until later in the summer.
We will stop the czar of college hockey from getting information. Well,
I'm going to go down to Florida. My super PAC is going to send me down to Florida.
There you go, folks.
I'm going to play in the coaches golf tournament. And
we're
going to have a media team.
Why don't we see? Well, why don't we have Mankato anymore? They weren't interested, wasn't it? The last you had kind of heard.
They didn't want to play Minnesota. Yeah, so
It's got to be both sides.
Good for them. Good for them. Maybe their goalie will keep being a Richter runner-up until they play a big boy schedule.
They did go to Michigan. They split at Michigan. It's kind of hard to have a big boy schedule when you don't have a big boy league. I'm
That's
sorry,
true.
the league was bad. Hopefully they get better, but I have a feeling that this whole.
Well, I do think the COVID year stuff being done will help all those schools.
Yeah,
I think it'll help them because it's maybe a little bit less roster turnover for them. We'll see. I mean, we saw Mac Godowski commit to Penn State today, right? The Hobie finalist.
We did.
So
out of Army,
I think
right?
that'll still happen.
Didn't he want to get out of Army before being forced into having to do that whole?
I don't know if it was he wanted to get out of Army. It's just like he got it to be a much better player this year. They always say big players are slower to develop, and he's a big player. So I think he always wanted to go to Penn State, but he just wasn't good enough until now. But yes, when you sign your 2 for 7 papers at a military school, you've finished your sophomore year, you commit to 2 more years of school and then 5 years of service. So if you sign those papers and then you unenroll from your school, you have to pay back the government for all the school you've already.
I'm trying to remember
the academies.
David Robinson. I think he only had to do 2 years with the Naval Academy because I'm pretty.
He was serving the Navy by being an NBA Hall of Famer.
True, but
if you were that good.
For us old guys, he did serve his 2 years after his 4 years of college. Back then, players played more, and I respect that so much. I mean, holy cow, the pressure was on him to sorry, I'm serving my 2 years. I'm doing it. He did it. Obviously, Roger Staubach, Steve's talking about there. And unfortunately, that's why we don't see the military academies as powerful as they once used to be. You look at football and look at Army back in the day. They were up there with Minnesota with how good they were. We just don't see that anymore. But David Robinson is kind of the last guy I remember as a big athlete that served his 2 years. And he might have been on a submarine. Yikes!
I think surface warfare is probably a better fit for him.
So we don't know the schedule. We'll start hearing pieces of it when schedules start coming out. Tate Pritchard, that's kind of where I was saying I couldn't remember his name at the time. That's the one that Dan Myers is freaking out about. Yeah,
so we're pretty sure Tate Pritchard is coming to the Gophers.
But he played with Tanner Ludke at Lakefield South.
Mm-hmm. There's one other player that plays for the Des Moines Buccaneers that my mind is blanking on that people are rumored to
Did we have it
coming to Minnesota?
I can't remember.
I know.
I mean,
he's like their top center. Someone's gonna get this in chat before I can find it. But he decommitted from Minnesota State, but he hasn't announced where he's going.
So yeah, Tate Pritchard, yeah. I'm looking through it. I'm looking through some of our texts.
Not on my game.
Hey, this is what overtime's for.
Yeah,
Kernan.
Jack Kernan.
Kernan
is the other guy.
Yeah.
So we'll see. He's a Maple Grove guy. He's big. He's a center. He's been good for Des Moines. He would fit a role, I think, a little bit with Minnesota as they're waiting to see, what happens in the portal in the next month, with coaches maybe leaving their positions and players looking to find new homes. Everything's fluid
and the decision. All of a sudden, maybe they get 27 roster, 28. Who knows?
I do think Motzko never wants to have more than 15 forwards, though. I know some people have been saying on the message board that he should just get the best roster he can get possible and then let it sort out. And if guys leave the program, that's fine. I don't think that's the way you want to run a program. I think you want to have guys like Maxwell Begley and Nick Michael who are willing to be hard practice players and be ready for when they get a chance versus guys. I don't want to throw Charlie Strobel under the bus, but a guy who gets frustrated when he doesn't play and then goes to another school and finds out it's not any better. And now Charlie Strobel isn't playing college hockey.
And Pino is back in the portal as well.
Yeah, he's back in the portal. And he's a guy who thought he should be playing power play at Minnesota. And or Tristan Brose wasn't patient enough to wait his turn at Minnesota and goes to Denver. And yes, he wins a national title there, but he's not in the NHL. Maybe it would have been better to be patient and get there eventually.
But we also understand we weren't patient when we were young either. You learn from your decisions, even if you made bad ones.
But I think some of the patience is being pushed on these guys by advisors, by agents, by skills people, rather than trusting what they feel. They feel all this pressure to commit early, to go to school early, to turn pro early. Guess what? I just had a parent of a player whose kid is playing minor league hockey right now saying it's a jungle out there in minor league hockey. You are trying to steal jobs from men who have families that they're trying to provide for, and they're just hanging on to their job in whatever league they're in. They're not making room for you because you left college early. And if you don't perform, that team is going to cut you and find somebody else to take your spot. They're not going to be patient with you when you have a slump. I remember Nate Condon, when he talked to us on one of the podcasts, he was like, yeah, I had a bad 2 weeks in the AHL. I had a bad 2 weeks in the ECHL, and that was kind of it. I didn't have time to find my confidence, and it just didn't work out. Pro hockey's brutal. You can always leave early and run into trouble. You can rarely stay too late and find your game.
I think we might have talked about this a little bit before. Do a lot of players now in the portal, are they going to find themselves trying to go? Well, for one thing, they might not get picked up at all. They might not want to go to D3. I think a lot of these guys it's either going to be D3 or retire. I mean, nothing against him. I don't see Pino being picked up again. He could go D3. Does he want to go D3? I have a feeling like 100 plus players in this portal could go nowhere this year, Viggs.
I mean, St. Norbert's is about to get really good. River Falls, or I'm trying to think who's the goalie at River Falls that used to play for the Gophers. From Rochester Century, I think.
I don't remember.
Who am I thinking of? Brendan Boynton. Brendan Boynton found a home in River Falls.
Yeah.
Playing D3 hockey. And it's worked out well for him.
Yeah, but it worked out well for him. But now there's going to be there's not going to be spots.
Makes puck count.
There's not going to be spots. I mean, we already have an AIC team going away. So that's one whole team of 25 to 30 players, whatever.
30, 34.
Yeah.
They have a lot of players on their roster.
Yeah. So they all hit the portal themselves. The fifth year is gone. A lot of teams are waiting. A lot of
clearing
teams
out rooms for a lot of CHL players.
Yeah, teams are clearing out rooms. You look, like I said, just look at Omaha. They 6-7 guys went to it and they're gone. I think a lot of kids won't be playing hockey come next fall.
Not Division I hockey.
No, and maybe not D3 because, like you said, I don't know.
No roster limits in D3 though. If you can pay the tuition,
but still,
that's for you.
It's just a different thing. They're gonna be. I mean, okay,
Yeah,
let's use Pino as an example. He went down to Omaha. Why? Maybe not quite as nice as Minnesota. Oh, I'm still not playing. Now he's going to go to a D3. I used to get catered plane rides and all this other stuff, and it's
now I've got to do work study and I've got to do the laundry for the team. Like what?
It's
come on, guys, close the hooks on your bags. Tired of picking up your jock straps out of the dryer.
Oh boy, it's there's gonna be a lot of kids without a place to go, unfortunately.
Yeah, 170 players still in the portal.
Yep.
There's not enough roster spots for all those kids. So,
and there'll be some more additions. Like they'll be trickling in here. You might see a little wave go up right before the end of May, before May 15th. And then, like you said, wait for if the coach decides to, move on to somewhere else. You could see that.
Yeah, like I think it would be hard to see David Carl leave Denver because he seems so invested in that school. Ferschweiler just signed a new contract with Western, and the buyout for him is all of his remaining salary through, I think, 29-30. So that's like over $2 million that an NHL team would have to pay. So I don't see either of them going anywhere.
Yeah, but you never know. I wouldn't put it past anybody.
You never know, but
we have Viggs and I. We have a guy who has access to portal and maintains it. Don't want to put his name out there, but we appreciate him more than anyone else. Yes, there are other portal sites out there.
Not more than anyone else, but we appreciate him.
Oh, but he's keeping up the D1 men's, which is when I search the D1 men's portal, we come up first, and then Grand Forks Hero comes up second. You search for any other portals, we are the place, and all due to our friend. The women's portal is not out there very much. I had a Boston University player, sending me messages via Twitter saying, "Hey, this girl for BC has these points, and this person is that," and so it's become really important for the women's portal, and obviously we do the D3 portals as well. So, I just can't thank him enough for doing that. He enjoys it. He's also been doing our, what some of the former Gophers are doing in pro leagues. We've got a list out there for that. He loves to keep track of. Total numbers guy. We love it. So it's a big deal, and we love that we're not just Gopher hockey leagues. We're kind of contributing a little bit to the rest of college hockey with our lists.
We're trying to keep track of our officials in the Big Ten and how they're doing and who's working the postseason.
Yeah.
They've invited me to their summer meetings in Chicago this summer. So I'm going to see if it fits my schedule. And I will take the quizzes that they all take on controversial calls so that they can help clarify how to interpret the rules.
So
which would be interesting. So, like, you'll see a video of a play.
Yeah.
And then everyone will say, what should the call be? And then you'll see, 80% of the room says it's this, 20% say it's that. Okay, 80%, why do you think this is the right call? 20%, why do you think that's the right call? Stuff like that.
Oh, his name is slipping my mind. Who is the supervisor of officials?
Keith Piotrowski.
Yes. I'm sorry. I knew it was a P. I'm like, I just couldn't. I've never met him. Have you ever had a chance? I think he has been. He does make it to all the arenas.
Yeah, I've met him a couple times, and He's always very helpful to clarify what the
Mhm.
rules are, and he's
And we used to
not
get
gonna
the
pass
same from
judgment
Shep.
on anybody.
We used to get the same from Shep when he was doing the WCHA too. We still see Shep around there over at Ritter quite often.
Everybody's trying to get it right.
Yeah,
So
you are correct. You are correct. Piotrowski, by the way, refed both of the last national championship victories for Minnesota. Big fan. It just turned. That was long before he was running anything. Oh yeah, there it is. I didn't even see that, but yeah, he did. I remember that he refed both the championships, and I don't remember who the other ref was, but
I mean, those games are just called so perfectly. I mean,
yeah. So we've got our page out there, and some of the refs do know that we've put them out on the internet and say, hey,
well, it's hard to like understand who the refs are. Like, there aren't really good
mhm,
resources for who the refs are for the different leagues,
mhm.
and I don't expect them to do media every game, but I expect them to be held accountable
Mhm.
and for fans to know who they are a little bit, right? I mean, the NHL officials all have a number and they're all registered, and you can track what games they work, and certain people are very interested in how teams perform when certain refs are on the ice. Not as big a deal in college hockey, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I know, I've had some, we've talked with Colin quite a bit, Colin Cronforst, Andrew Brueggemann, a little bit with Tony Check, who retired this season. We do get to kind of, we do sometimes see these guys at post-game beverages, and they'll talk to us stuff off the record, not too much. And a lot of times they just say, hey, this is how I saw it. And then when you listen to them, you're like, okay, that makes sense. But that's off the record. We're not going to talk about those kind of conversations, Feeks. But there are rules where you can request a pool reporter go and talk with refs, but it's like a written request. It's some kind of weird.
It's very complicated to do. I just think it's important for people to understand how the call was made. And if you didn't see it, you didn't see it.
Mhm.
Like, every ref you ever talk to, they're just like, I can't call what I didn't see. And I did not see what happened. Seeing the replay, yes. That's why the replay review is so helpful in these major penalties, because you can get a second look. But at the time, the refs are trying to make the call that they see on the ice. And one of the things I think would be interesting is, like, in the Frozen Four, they had like the chest cam,
Mhm.
and they had like the Iron Man camera.
Yeah, they had one ref and one linesman wear for every game.
And I just think that shows you what they see. Like, there's traffic on the ice that doesn't allow you to see everything like you can from a TV camera. It's not easy. I don't even like reffing practice for my kids. Like, it's just not very fun. It's hard to call offsides and icing and call penalties. So, and it's hard to call penalties and see the whole ice.
The definition of major penalty must have changed for the playoffs. A few would have been for sure majors in the regular season. I think I did kind of notice that, Viggs. Maybe borderline.
I don't know. I mean, I saw some of the calls that were questionable that went for review and stuff, and the players were often changing their vulnerability late on the checks, which is part of the rule. The onus is on the hitter to not do a dangerous play, but sometimes when the guy getting hit changes their positioning so much, it's unavoidable that the contact is going to be goofy. They've put themselves in that position because they don't just take the hit.
Yeah.
They're trying to avoid it so quickly that they put themselves in a bad position. Like, in the NHL, players don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to get hit here. I better be ready. I take the hit. In college, you have a lot of players who are trying to get out of the way and dodge it, and then they put their extremities, their head or their knee in a vulnerable spot.
High school terms.
Yes, Andrew?
I would agree.
Andrew, it's very clear that if you call too many penalties in the state high school tournament, you will not be invited back to officiate. That is very clear. Very much prison rules practice the month leading up to the state tournament for those teams because they will not call anything.
Oh, I do see this. Sue Slayer saying, had someone tell me weeks ago that Jeff Frazee was in a bad car accident. There is a GoFundMe. I'll reach out to some people, see if we can find anything out about that. Because if there is, we'll totally get that up on our social media.
Yeah.
And going, I think I'm connected to his dad on LinkedIn. I could maybe send a message to his dad as well. Didn't know about that. If it's true, we'll try to figure it out. We'll reach out to some of our guys. But thank you for bringing it to our attention, though. So hopefully he's okay. So Cornell faced mask. Major was the opposite and was atrocious. I didn't see that first Cornell game. Was that the first Cornell against Michigan State? Max talk about?
Didn't see that one.
Yeah, we were. The other games that was going on right when the whole Fargo games were happening. I don't know. All I remember, somebody turned around to me and said, "Cornell just won in overtime." I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, versus BU. Okay, yeah. They didn't see any of that, but I didn't see the Michigan State game at all. So. Oh, Steve. Yeah, we know about Steve. Deutsch, you should just come on the show. Want to come on the show? We're going to bed soon. Oh, boy. Fun year, Viggs. It's always a fun year, though.
Fun year. Disappointing to see all the departures.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised either.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of the attitude stuff this year, not to get too behind the doors and stuff, but just difficult this year, I think, for everyone to manage. And I think when Motts was talking about the World Juniors being a players' tournament, he's also talking about this year's team. He's a players' coach. And if the players don't have the discipline and the mindset to play a certain way, it's hard to be successful and change that.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's on the coach to construct the roster. He gets to pick the players. No other place like Minnesota can you pick players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it happens like that everywhere, but this team just did not execute at a level that they needed to consistently in the second half. And the first half is almost too easy for them. People get injured, it doesn't matter. Someone gets sick, we'll figure it out. But then the second half, when the rest of college hockey gets really into their systems and really into their detail and the games become tighter, this team just didn't match up with that very well. So I think I was overly optimistic at times in the second half this time, but
I don't know. Yes, disappointing, but next season. There's always next season.
Well, and just next season, I look at the roster and I see all the pessimism out there. And I'm just I don't know. I mean, I really like Jimmy Clark and Brody Zemer and Brody Lamb as players. I think Leo Grubauer and Luke Middlestat and Cal Thomas can lead a decor. I don't know. I think college hockey is going to be different next year without the fifth-year players. So they've got two good goalies, with Luka and Nathan.
I liked your thoughts on Gruba too. I think Gruba's going to kind of blow up. I don't know.
I think he was very much a Ryan Johnson player this year, where he's just I'm not going to make many mistakes, not going to take many chances. But I've got players ahead of me who are going to do all the fancy stuff. I'm just going to keep it simple and acclimate to where I'm at. So
Tom's,
he's an older player; he'll be fine.
Tom's put Grumpy on the. Jeez. Oh, what else we got? We had the players. That's the hardest part. Yeah, that's true, Mote.
Looking back, they didn't have the right players. I'm gonna push back on that.
All right.
These were not the right players. If they were the right players, they would have figured it out against Notre Dame. They would have figured out against UMass and closed out the game. Obviously, they weren't the right players. Like they all signed. Sorry. That's the book. Like they didn't get the calls, but they didn't overcome it anyway. You know, Jimmy Snuggerud had a great finish in Fargo. He didn't get enough help, and
Yeah, that's
you got to
true.
feel bad for him for that, because that was one of
Because
his better
honestly,
games.
if he would have done nothing and they lost that, I would have been like, "You've got to be kidding me." Because honestly, he would not have shown up in the big games, but he did. He did, and he got his first goal last night. Congratulations, Jimmy!
And where did he score it?
In the paint.
In the paint. In the paint.
I don't even know how he got that puck out. It happened so fast. Also, it was like chipped in. It's like really weird.
Montgomery sees him as a bumper player in the NHL. So the guy who's in the middle, who goes around the net, floats into space, maybe trades with the wing player every once in a while, but Jim Montgomery sees him as a perfect bumper player in the NHL.
I felt like Renzel turned off his game in the second half.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
No. But everything was going great first half. He was doing great. Everybody was great. Greatest team ever. Yeah. You know, after that Michigan series, they went to number 1, Viggs.
Yeah.
Don't get Viggs started. Thanks, Scott.
Renzel and Chesley are not the players that Lacombe and Faber were. They're just not. Mm-hmm. And I think this year proved that. And both those players are gone, and I don't think you'll consistently see them in NHL lineups next year.
Zemer flatline, but I still have high hopes. He does have a lot of upside, I think.
He has a lot of upside. I saw a lot out of his game. I thought he was a competitive player all season. I think the points for a guy like Zemer weren't easy on this roster to get, but I think there's no doubt he won't be a contributor next year. So,
how about Paulson?
Well, I think he was hurt. You know, that takes a toll on a player who's a freshman and plays center. And Jimmy Clark was hurt and played through it as well. You know, those are 2 key players for Minnesota, especially after Hughlin got hurt, that they had to lean on, and they weren't really ready. So,
no, Hughlin's thing. It's still terrible.
Yeah,
I would love to. I would love to have seen Hughlin be a little more selfish in his game over his career, but he's just not that kind of guy.
Nope, not his guy.
No, because there were some flashes of selfishness, and he's like, "Whoa." Hopefully he does well. Hopefully, he got signed by somebody. I can't remember who, but I don't know. All right, Viggs.
Okay.
Good season, folks. It's always a good season.
They've been to the tournament last 5 years. 2 Frozen Fours. A lot of players go in the NHL. Sky's not falling. This team will be competitive next year. This is not a rebuild.
This roster could have had Cooley and Nyes as a senior.
I still love the joke I was trying to feed Bob. It's like, yeah, you know, Snuggerud, you know, one of the first players to have, 20-plus goals his freshman, sophomore, junior year. Just imagine what he's going to do his senior year, you know. He could be the first to have 4.
You know, though, didn't he give a look, though, after they lost the previous season against BU? Was it in Sioux Falls? Some of the things he said, it was like, Jimmy's coming back for his junior, because I just remember
it was in the pre-regional where he said something like he was coming back, and I was like, I didn't believe him.
But he also had a look on his face. He kind of had a look like, jokes on you guys, or just something weird. I remember it though.
Yeah, it was definitely I wasn't there for it because it was
Yeah.
the day before the game, and I was driving back and forth to that one.
You
I
were.
didn't have to do that this time. But yeah, this year I felt like the post game Bob like took a shot at me when I asked the first question. I was like, "Come on, man! It's like you gotta ask him."
He didn't have
something.
Jess to beat up on.
I know, so he took it out on me, and I was like, "All right, Bob, if it's gonna be that way."
All right, folks. Again, thank you all for being with us all season. Thanks for some great overtime, sticking with us late at night. You got
Minnesota
anything?
goodbye overtime tonight.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. So.
The last one.
It is the last one. So just say goodnight, Vigs.
Good night, Vigs.
Goodnight, Vigs.
Yeah, I'm gonna get ready to fund that NIL this
Yeah,
summer.
it's gonna be big.
I work with
It's gonna be
Gopher Hockey
huge.
alumni.
Huge.
Huge.